To my kin in the diaspora, my African brethren that does not live on African soil, I want to shout out to those who look like me in every corner of the world. I can only imagine how amazing it must be to be in a place and an environment where if you play according to the rules, more or less you'll be able to get what the system allows for. It's rare for us on the continent, the soil that belongs to us, all of us, to have that kind of freedom here at home and those opportunities. And the primary reason for that is because the people who don't look like us on our soil have more say in what happens here than we do. If you are in Europe, if you are in Asia, if you are in the Americas as an African, you have to abide by the laws of the majority, which is the people of those civilizations, of those nations, of those continents. So it's natural for you to conform. But it shouldn't be natural for me as an African living on the African continent to have to conform to the way of life of people who don't come from here. People who do not rightfully have a claim to this land or any of its means of production, the supply chains, the resources, the minerals, the very land that any enterprise is built in South Africa specifically. Is still built on stolen land. And we have a government of national unity because we're still trying to negotiate into a state where we have more of a say, which is absurd, of course. But I want to shout out to you guys who have left home. And I've been watching the Olympics here and there. And I've obviously been paying particular attention to how the African society, the African descendants, the people who look more or less like me, how they've been weighing up against the world's best. And the moving stories of how teenagers leave their homes in pursuit of a better life, not just for themselves, but for their families. And then they win the gold medal in the 100 meters for women in spectacular fashion. And the world is stunned because, nobody was talking about her being that person, and, her whole nation has a gold medal for the first time in its existence. And so I must shout out to the diaspora and the inspiration that you are for us on the continent, the incredible natural resources that you are for our ability to imagine Africa as a continent that is built on the best that Africans are doing everywhere in the world. And that for me is exciting. It is encouraging. It leads me to believe that the resurrection and restoration of African civilization is so close. It is so close. I've been obsessing over the African Renaissance, and the departure point of the African Renaissance is that every African everywhere in the world must undergo a cultural revolution, a personal cultural evolution, where you look only at what the best of the people who look like you are doing. Just for a moment, just indulge yourself in how amazing Africans are wherever they are in the world, and how they are able to flourish in environments that were not designed for them, but they're able to transcend culture wherever they go. And so I must shout out to you guys in the diaspora, and I must change the narrative about how we feel about you. There's a lot of trauma in South Africa, and there's a lot of trauma in the African continent. We're still being played like puppets in our own society, and we're being played against each other, and that's the way it's always been, and it continues to be that way. And obviously they do that with you in the diaspora as well, to dissuade you from coming here and experiencing for yourself just how fucking amazing life is, despite the fact that we're not living according to our own cognition, our own way of seeing the world, our own natural inclination, living according to the dictates of our soul. And we're able to do that still despite the extraordinary repression that the European civilization still exerts on South Africa, specifically where I live, but broadly speaking in the entire continent. So, as somebody who has had the good fortune of going to the States, of going to Europe on multiple occasions, of having been able to go to Singapore, extraordinary Singapore, of being able to go to Morocco, where colonization and settler colonialism in Africa truly began. That's not even a conversation that we're having, but I remember I was there and I saw it, and I saw Europe standing on the coast of Tangiers, and Europe was just across the water. There was no discovering anything. It's always been known to everybody. And so our history is literally in the land. You need only move across it and you will see. I've been to Tanzania on multiple occasions with the good fortune of seeing that. Zanzibar, which is spectacular. Again, a perfect example of how Africans are forced to live according to a culture that is not innate, and still being able to flourish and enterprise. And you guys in the diaspora, having mastered the way of life of European civilization in the states of Europeans, and having experienced the kind of efficiency that Europe comes with, are able to bring all of that intricate insight. You know how it feels, you know what it looks like, you know how it operates, you can time it, and so you can curate your life in such a way that you truly can have the best that life has to offer. And so I must shout out to the capacity that you demonstrate. I'm so grateful to be African and being able to see how resilient we are as a people. And nowhere, for me at least, is that evident than in the diaspora. So this is a shout out to my kin in the diaspora. Whatever you've been told, I'm telling you, it's not true. And if you ever want to come home, if you ever want to come home, we've got enough space at home. In my village, there are enough beds. Please don't hesitate to hop into any form of communication of mine that's out there. And you can come home. When somebody ever says to you, go back to Africa, you now have an opportunity to say, you know what, actually, let me do that. So this is a shout out to you. I truly appreciate you. I appreciate your resilience. I appreciate a quality that we call kwaXhosa istima, which is gravitas. Gravitas, gravity, the thing that holds you to the ground. As an African, you have that innately in you, and I can see it everywhere around the world. No matter what they depict of you, that's one quality that always shines through. There are always those who remember istima and remember the values that your ancestors took with you, our ancestors took with you when you were carried across the water. It's in your song, it's in the way you move, it's in your ability to take a very shitty situation and turn it into a culture. And so I commend you. I appreciate you so much. I've got so much love for you in my heart, in my aura, in my mind, in my words. I hope it reflects. Just a shout out. Just a shout out. Just a shout out. As an African, you are an extraordinary creature, an extraordinary being. You come from the very beginning of humanity, whether it was called Al-Kebulan, or whatever other name in dialect it has been referred to. But there was a time, and there is a time, and there will be a time when we as Africans can move so freely across the continent as to completely and utterly nullify any national borders. And it's inevitable, it's in the discourse, it's in the minds of the people, it's in the hearts of the people. And so come home. If they ever tell you go back to Africa, you say, you know what, I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to leave everything I have to my Native American brothers so that they can occupy their own land. I am going to leave it to my brothers of foreign civilizations so that they can occupy where we are leaving behind, so that you don't absorb it again into the European system. And you can come home, and you can come home and we've got a brickyard at home. We can grow some vegetables. We have herding. We have beds, roofs. We can build more. There's land. We've got 2 properties that are waiting for development at home. And we have access to more. So if you ever truly feel, even if it's just for a short period of time, to just come and see what it's like, come through. Come through. The African Renaissance has been alive and kicking from the time that you guys were taken out and off of our shores, whether it was voluntary now in modern society, or whether it was right at the beginning of the time when they started trading us as cattle. The Renaissance has always been there. We've never given up on freedom, and we never will, and so inevitably justice will prevail, and we will reconnect as we are. And like I said, in a tangible way, I am giving life and expression to that. If you anywhere in the diaspora feel the urge to come home, I'm telling you, you have a home with me, you have a home with my family, you have a home with the village that I come from. And we are spread, across the whole country. I venture to say that we're spread on Zanzibar as well. So, if that's a space that you'd like to explore, we can find a way to integrate you there. I am so convinced of the African Agenda 2063 vision that I believe that we're going to achieve it before 2063. And I say that because of what I see in Africans everywhere around the world. In the conversations that we have, I am 100% and utterly convinced. I have seen it. I have experienced it in real time. And also I've seen its integration and the singularity of African society and African civilization, and a rejuvenation of our languages and our cultures and our artistic expression and our fashion senses and our sports prowesses and our scientific inclinations. I saw Terence Howard being taken over the coals on Piers Morgan. And they had an all-white panel coming to discuss what our brother over there is trying to offer the world. And yeah, I love it. I love it. The world is active. We're having conversations. Africans are standing up and they're having their own narratives and they're standing by them. And again, this is my shout out to you in the diaspora, because you're pushing those boundaries and you're showing us the tools and resources to be able to do it here at home. Dave Chappelle was talking about, doing some acting in Nigeria on the Joe Rogan show, or the Joe Rogan Experience. And, just watching 2 human beings who have experienced life at the sweetest possible spot, and having somebody like Dave saying, look, I've spent some time in Africa. And I'm feeling to spend some more time in Africa, and that for me is again just testament to what we're actually offering as a people in Africa, because we may not have control of our natural resources. We may not have control of our political systems. We may not have control of our means of production, what they call an economy, right now, but we have a rightful claim. And with the resource that you are as the diaspora, we can achieve by 2030 the most extraordinary transformation the world has ever seen. I've seen it. We're doing it already. And for me, it's just an acceleration of that process. It's about spreading the word. It is about encouraging Africans to look at the best that we have to offer ourselves and each other, build our families, make sure they're strong and resilient, and they know how valuable they are to all of mankind. Remember who we are as the first human beings in history. Nobody disputes the fact that Africa was the beginning of mankind and the beginning of civilization, at least in this iteration of humanity. I am so grateful to our ancestors like Upiko, who I'm channeling for the most part. I'm transforming and evolving his Black consciousness movement into an African Renaissance and an African identity, because the economies of scale, the power of our masses, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 billion strong, and counting, we have the capacity to change global politics with how we move. So knowing that inevitability, I'm excited to embrace any African who is willing to venture into that reality, that narrative, that version of our experience as human beings. Because before I'm an African, I am a human being. So a shout out to my European descendants as well. You're not a part of this conversation because you've got nothing to add or contribute. You've said enough. You've done enough. Thank you. Goodbye. My African kin, you are more valuable than anybody is willing to tell you, because they have something to lose. There's certain things I cannot lose. I cannot lose my home. I cannot lose my family. I cannot lose my community. And you have that kind of backing. So I have that kind of confidence to know that there is nothing anybody can offer me that would derail me from actualizing this shout out. So take me up on my word, take me up on my actions, and let's do the unthinkable. Let us change the world to reflect those who were here first. So this is what adulting looks like. This is what home looks like in one iteration. There's life here. There's life. So I welcome you. I embrace you. I love you so much. And I look forward to meeting you.